If you think common sense is actually common, you have clearly never worked the returns desk at a home improvement center. Prepare to lose absolute faith in humanity as we expose 69 of the most mind-numbing, aggressively stupid, and straight-up baffling complaints ever filed by people who should legally not be allowed anywhere near power tools. 1. A guy practically kicked the door down to return a tape measure, furious that it was aggressively possessed. He showed the manager how the yellow metal strip viciously sucked itself back into the plastic case every time he let go. The manager slowly pointed to the giant thumb lock on the top, explaining the concept of auto-retraction. The customer still demanded a refund, claiming the box never warned him about the violent snapping hazard. 2. One extremely angry DIYer hauled 5 heavy 2x4s right up to the customer service desk. He demanded his money back because the wood was totally defective and covered in weird brown circles. The cashier stared at him and gently explained that those circles are called knots, which exist because wood literally comes from trees. The guy accused the store of selling factory reject synthetic beams and stormed out without his lumber. 3. A woman called the garden center completely hysterical because her expensive new solar pathway lights were totally dead straight out of the box. After a long troubleshooting session, the employee asked how much direct sunlight her yard gets. It turned out she had hammered all 12 stakes straight into the carpet of her windowless basement. When informed that solar power requires the actual sun, she threatened a lawsuit because the packaging said place anywhere. 4. You know that classic dad joke where you point a stud finder at yourself and make a beeping noise? Well, one guy missed the joke completely. He brought a high-end electronic stud finder back to the store, absolutely livid that it was broken. His proof? He pointed it at his own chest, and it did not light up. The returns clerk had to politely explain that the machine detects wooden wall beams, not sheer masculine energy. 5. Paint department employees still talk about the furious homeowner who bought premium clear coat wood finish and brought the empty can back. He brushed 4 thick layers onto his back deck and was absolutely enraged that the wood did not turn white. The associate tapped the giant word clear printed on the label. The customer confidently argued that clear was just a trendy designer name for a bright, snowy white and demanded compensation for his ruined weekend. 6. Getting a house key copied seems foolproof until a lady managed to turn it into an absolute circus. She paid $2 for a duplicate, drove to her sister's apartment in a totally different neighborhood, and tried to unlock the door. When it obviously failed, she marched back yelling that the cutting machine was broken. She honestly believed a fresh blank key magically absorbed the unlocking properties of whatever door you shoved it into first. 7. A totally serious man dragged an expensive gas-powered string trimmer into the store, complaining that it was a lazy piece of junk. He bought it thinking it operated exactly like one of those robotic vacuum cleaners. He fired it up, dropped it in the middle of his overgrown lawn, and went inside to watch television. He came back an hour later furious that it had just violently dug a single 6-inch crater into the dirt. 8. One baffled customer brought in a standard spirit level and asked the hardware guy to remove the defect. What was the defect? He pointed directly at the little air bubble suspended inside the green liquid. He was heavily annoyed that this weird bubble kept moving around and throwing off his measurements. The employee tried to explain that the bubble is literally the entire point of the tool, but the guy just asked for a manager. 9. A frantic guy sprinted into the store clutching a bottle of heavy-duty WD-40, demanding to know why his breakfast tasted like motor oil. Turns out, he ran out of cooking spray that morning and decided the blue and yellow can from his garage was a perfectly fine substitute for his cast iron skillet. He was genuinely outraged that an industrial water displacement formula designed to stop squeaky door hinges was not food grade. 10. The customer service desk was stunned when a man returned a chainsaw, complaining that it aggressively spat liquid everywhere. The mechanic popped the cap and realized this guy had filled the chain oil reservoir with pure maple syrup. The customer defended his incredibly sticky decision by stating the manual asked for a thick amber liquid, and he refused to support the petroleum industry. He was totally shocked that his warranty did not cover pancake condiments. 11. A highly agitated woman stormed in to return a roll of heavy-duty double-sided mounting tape, screaming at the top of her lungs that it was a total scam. She complained that she had spent hours pressing heavy, expensive picture frames against her living room wall, only to watch them immediately crash to the floor and shatter into pieces. The cashier calmly peeled a tiny piece off the roll, removed the thin protective plastic backing from the top adhesive layer, and stuck it permanently to the counter. The woman turned bright red and walked out. 12. You cannot make this up. A guy walked into the garden center holding an empty bag of premium birdseed and looking incredibly betrayed. He told the clerk he followed the directions perfectly, planted the seeds in premium potting soil, watered them every single day, and not a single bird had sprouted. The employee stared at him in dead silence for a full minute before realizing the customer was absolutely not making a joke. 13. A teenager confidently bought a heavy-duty toilet plunger and returned 2 hours later demanding the store pay for a new bumper on his Honda Civic. He watched a life hack video that said plungers can pop out car dents. Unfortunately, he bought the absolute strongest suction model available, attached it to his plastic bumper, and pulled so hard he ripped the entire front fascia completely off the vehicle. He blamed the rubber for being too aggressive. 14. One angry contractor threw a box of premium decking screws onto the counter, claiming the entire batch was defective. He insisted the store accidentally sold him left-handed screws because his power drill kept stripping the metal heads. The employee picked up the man's drill, flicked the switch from reverse back to forward, and drove a perfect screw into a scrap block of wood. The contractor grabbed his box and left without saying a single word. 15. A deeply confused customer brought in a completely smooth block of wood and a sheet of 80 grit sandpaper. He was furious that the sandpaper was actively destroying his beautiful coffee table project. The associate asked him to demonstrate his technique. The guy flipped the paper over and started vigorously rubbing the smooth paper backing against the wood, wondering why nothing was happening. He thought the rough side was just for better grip on your hands. 16. Paint matching technology is amazing, but it has limits. One woman demanded a custom paint mix to perfectly match her dining room walls. Instead of bringing in a paint chip or a photo, she slammed a piece of heavily burnt toast onto the counter. She argued that the toast had the exact rustic charcoal undertone she wanted for her accent wall. The paint mixer actually scanned the toast just to get her to stop yelling. 17. An angry father returned a heavy-duty extension cord because it failed to provide infinite free electricity. His brilliant plan was to plug one end of the 50-foot cord into the wall, hook up his power tools, and then plug the other end of the cord back into itself. He legitimately thought creating a closed loop would trap the electricity forever so he could disconnect it from the house and work off the grid. 18. A guy bought a bag of fast-setting concrete mix and returned the solid 80-pound gray rock it had turned into. He angrily explained that he stored the paper bag in the back of his pickup truck during a massive 3-day rainstorm. He demanded a full refund, completely baffled as to why a product specifically designed to harden when exposed to water decided to harden when exposed to water. 19. You have to love the lady who returned a standard wheelbarrow complaining that it was a total death trap because it completely lacked a steering wheel. She could not comprehend how you were supposed to turn corners without a proper turning mechanism. The cashier literally had to walk out from behind the register, grab the wooden handles, and pivot his body left to demonstrate the highly advanced technology of just walking in a different direction. 20. A customer caused a massive scene at the returns desk over a heavy-duty LED flashlight. He screamed that the flashlight was broken because it only worked at night. The bewildered manager turned it on, pointed the blinding beam at the wall, and said, "It works fine right now." The guy rolled his eyes and yelled that of course you can see it indoors, but when he points it at the actual sun outside, the beam vanishes. 21. One very irate gardener stormed in, demanding a refund for a large plastic watering can, claiming it was completely defective right off the shelf. She aggressively pointed at the removable nozzle on the end of the spout, furious that it was absolutely covered in tiny little holes. The manager tried to explain that the sprinkler head is specifically designed to create a gentle rain effect for delicate plants. The woman refused to listen, yelling that a brand new bucket should hold water perfectly without leaking everywhere. 22. A completely serious guy brought back a half-empty box of galvanized framing nails, complaining that the manufacturer completely forgot to carve the little cross shapes into the top of them. He spent 20 minutes trying to drive them into a deck board with his cordless power drill, getting incredibly frustrated that the bit kept slipping off the smooth, flat metal surface. The cashier had to slowly demonstrate the ancient, highly advanced technology of hitting them with a heavy metal hammer instead of spinning them. 23. You would be amazed by the woman who demanded to speak to the regional manager over a large vanity mirror she purchased for her bathroom. She was extremely upset because every time she looked into the expensive glass, it reflected all the dirty laundry and messy clutter sitting right behind her. She genuinely believed premium mirrors were manufactured with special filter technology to blur out the background and only focus on the person, just like a modern smartphone camera taking a portrait photo. 24. A deeply traumatized customer returned a traditional wooden snap mousetrap in a sealed plastic bag, absolutely horrified by what it had done. He had set it up behind his kitchen stove with a piece of premium cheddar cheese, fully expecting it to safely cage the rodent so he could release it into a beautiful meadow. He accused the store of selling unregulated tiny medieval torture devices and demanded they start stocking cruelty-free traps that politely asked the mice to pack their bags and leave the premises forever. 25. During a massive neighborhood blackout, a furious homeowner drove to the hardware store and slammed a box of brand new LED light bulbs onto the counter. He was absolutely raging that the premium bulbs were a total scam because his living room was still pitch black. The extremely tired employee pointed out the window at the completely dark streetlights and explained how the entire city grid was currently down. The guy aggressively argued that expensive bulbs should have their own internal energy reserves to survive emergencies. 26. We cannot ignore the elderly gentleman who bought a pair of clear plastic safety goggles and complained they were completely useless for reading his morning newspaper. He thought the heavy-duty polycarbonate lenses would magically magnify the small print just because they were sold in the professional tool aisle. When the clerk explained they were meant to stop flying wood chips and metal shards from destroying his eyeballs, the man got offended and said he needed something to fix his astigmatism, not prepare for a war zone. 27. The garden center team was left absolutely speechless when a very frustrated woman brought in 3 completely brown, withered artificial plastic ferns. She was highly upset because she had diligently watered them every single morning for 6 straight months, precisely following a strict botanical schedule. The moisture had completely rotted out the decorative woven baskets they came in, and she wanted the store to pay for her damaged patio furniture. She was totally devastated to learn that synthetic polymer leaves do not actually require daily hydration. 28. An aspiring carpenter stormed up to the register with a high-end circular saw, aggressively complaining that the name of the tool was extremely misleading. He tried to use the spinning blade to carve a perfect circular hole straight through the middle of his wooden kitchen door for a pet flap. When the heavy machine just violently shredded the wood in a straight line, he threw a massive fit. He honestly thought the word circular referred to the shape it cuts, rather than the literal shape of the spinning metal blade. 29. A totally baffled teenager brought 2 heavy-duty neodymium magnets back to the service desk, claiming they were fundamentally broken right out of the package. He demonstrated his issue by trying to force the 2 positive poles together, loudly complaining that an invisible force field kept pushing them apart. The cashier gave him a very brief, impromptu physics lesson on magnetic polarity and simply flipped one of the metal discs over so they slammed together. The kid accused the employee of doing a magic trick and demanded a refund. 30. We have all made mistakes, but one guy took his lack of common sense to a whole new level. He marched into the store with his left index finger and thumb permanently fused together, yelling that the store sold him a weaponized chemical agent. He had casually used industrial-strength superglue without gloves, smeared it on his hands, and pinched his fingers to see how fast it dried. He wanted to sue the manufacturer for assault because the packaging did not specifically warn him against gluing his own body parts together. 31. A furious backyard chef completely destroyed his brand-new expensive stainless steel propane grill and demanded a full replacement on a Tuesday morning. His complaint was that the igniter button failed to light the mountain of charcoal briquettes he had aggressively dumped directly over the delicate metal gas burners. When the mechanic pointed to the giant liquid propane hose and regulator, the customer argued that gas was just an optional flavor enhancer and real men always cook over heavily lighter fluid-soaked charcoal. 32. The paint desk associate could not stop laughing after dealing with a guy who returned an open can of premium interior wall paint and a jug of heavy-duty paint thinner. The customer was absolutely enraged that his beautiful blue accent color had turned into a watery, transparent blue puddle on his living room floor. He legitimately thought paint thinner was a special chemical designed to help overweight people look incredibly skinny if they stood directly in front of a wall painted with that exact mixture. 33. One very sensitive homeowner dragged a standard white plastic toilet seat right up to the returns counter, deeply offended by his bathroom experience. He loudly complained that the seat was unacceptably freezing cold in the middle of the night and caused him extreme emotional distress. He demanded to know why it lacked internal heating coils and a soft, glowing nightlight. The employee stared at the basic $15 plastic ring and politely informed the man that he had not in fact purchased a luxury Japanese bidet system. 34. A newlywed couple caused an absolute scene trying to return 12 boxes of swollen, ruined laminate wood flooring they had just installed a week prior. The incredibly angry husband complained that the wood started peeling and warping almost immediately. The manager asked about their cleaning routine, and the wife proudly admitted she used a heavy-duty garden hose to flood the living room twice a week to keep the fake wood properly hydrated. They were shocked that pressed sawdust and printed paper cannot handle torrential indoor downpours. 35. You have to appreciate the pure panic of the guy who returned a heavy-duty basement dehumidifier in a plastic garbage bag. He was absolutely furious, claiming the expensive machine was completely defective because it was secretly generating massive amounts of water and flooding his carpet. He had meticulously checked his plumbing and roof, finding absolutely no leaks anywhere. The electrical associate had to gently explain that pulling gallons of invisible moisture directly out of the humid air and putting it into a plastic bucket is literally the single function of the machine he purchased. 36. A completely exhausted man driving a tiny compact sedan demanded a refund for 50 solid concrete landscaping bricks he had just purchased an hour earlier. His complaint was absolutely mind-boggling. He was furious that the giant gray blocks of solid cement were incredibly heavy and ruined the suspension of his little car. He legitimately asked the store manager if they kept a secret stash of lightweight, hollow, inflatable bricks in the back room for people who did not want to lift heavy objects during major landscaping projects. 37. An incredibly angry event planner brought back a heavy-duty outdoor extension cord, screaming that it was a massive tripping hazard and totally defective. Her primary grievance was that the thick orange cable refused to lay perfectly flat on the grass right after being uncoiled from tight factory packaging. She demanded to speak to the corporate office, completely outraged that the hardware store did not invent a copper wire that magically irons itself straight like a piece of fresh dry cleaning the second it touches the ground. 38. A highly agitated musician returned a pair of heavy-duty locking pliers, aggressively complaining that they completely failed as a musical instrument. He had watched a weird internet video where someone used pliers to tune a guitar, but he completely misunderstood the assignment. He was furious that clicking the metal jaws together did not produce a melodious ringing sound like a tuning fork. The manager just stared at the greasy metal hand tool, completely baffled that someone expected a gripping wrench to resonate with perfect pitch. 39. A very sophisticated gentleman walked in wearing a pristine, tailored suit, holding a pair of heavy-duty leather work gloves with just the tips of 2 fingers. He demanded a full refund because the gloves had absorbed mud, grease, and grime while he was clearing thick, thorny bushes in his backyard. He argued that premium professional gear should feature a self-cleaning outer layer that aggressively repels all natural dirt. The clerk had to explain that getting completely filthy is literally the entire purpose of wearing protective yard gloves. 40. The return desk saw a lot of crazy things, but the woman complaining about a roll of invisible matte tape takes the cake. She used it to hang a huge paper banner on her incredibly filthy, dust-covered front window. She was furious that she could clearly see the outline of the sticky strips surrounded by a thick layer of heavy dirt. She loudly threatened to report the brand for false advertising, genuinely believing the word invisible meant the tape possessed magical optical camouflage to bend light around her dirty glass. 41. A deeply frustrated amateur plumber practically threw a small spool of white Teflon tape at the cashier, claiming it was completely lacking adhesive. He had spent an hour trying to wrap it around a leaking pipe joint, getting furious that the thin white film would not stick to the wet metal like heavy-duty duct tape. The employee politely explained that thread seal tape does not actually have glue on it, and you have to wrap it tightly into the screw threads to create a compression seal. The guy completely refused to believe it. 42. One homeowner absolutely lost his mind over a brand new premium push mower, claiming it was spitting cut grass all over his driveway instead of bagging it. The mechanic wheeled the machine into the shop, only to discover the customer had completely ignored the giant black collection bag sitting right inside the cardboard box. The guy honestly thought the lawnmower featured some kind of internal molecular disintegration chamber that just instantly vaporized the yard clippings into thin air. He was very disappointed by the harsh reality of basic landscaping physics. 43. A highly emotional college freshman returned a pack of damage-free wall-hanging strips, devastated that her dorm room walls were completely ruined. She had totally ignored the pull tabs on the bottom, and instead chose to aggressively rip the heavy plastic hooks straight off the drywall with a metal crowbar. When the associate gently pointed to the giant illustrated instructions showing how to stretch the adhesive straight down for a clean release, she burst into tears and blamed the store for selling a product that required actual reading comprehension. 44. An incredibly confused amateur woodworker brought back a highly expensive 25-foot measuring tape, claiming the printing machine at the factory made a massive error. He pointed out that after the number 12, the marking strangely went to 13 instead of resetting back to a brand new one. He was trying to measure something at 1 foot and 4 inches, and was completely paralyzed by the number 16. The returns clerk had to draw a small diagram on a receipt to explain the highly complex relationship between inches and feet. 45. A furious DIY guy dragged 2 massive 10-foot sections of thick white PVC plumbing pipe into the store, loudly complaining that they were totally empty. He was attempting to build an outdoor shower by his swimming pool, and legitimately thought buying water pipes meant they came pre-filled with high-pressure water straight from the factory. The manager stared at the hollow plastic tubes, completely dumbfounded, and asked the man how exactly he thought the water would stay inside a hollow tube with 2 giant open ends. The customer just shrugged angrily. 46. You will not believe the woman who demanded a refund for a tiny expensive bucket of premium glow in the dark acrylic paint. She painted her entire bedroom ceiling to look like a beautiful starry night sky, but was absolutely livid that the stars did not glow the very first night. The clerk asked if she had left the room lights on to charge the photoluminescent pigment. She looked at him like he was completely insane, insisting that glowing paint should naturally generate its own internal nuclear power source without needing external light. 47. A highly aggressive contractor stomped up to the service desk, holding a heavy-duty brass padlock that was completely clamped shut. He yelled that he accidentally locked the tiny brass keys inside the metal loop and demanded the store use their secret universal hardware remote to magically pop it open for him. When the cashier explained that padlocks do not have Bluetooth capability and he would literally have to buy bolt cutters to destroy it, the man accused the entire hardware industry of running a massive conspiracy to sell more cutting tools. 48. An incredibly paranoid homeowner returned a high-end outdoor security floodlight, absolutely convinced the technology was defective and extremely dangerous. He angrily explained that the bright dual lamps worked perfectly when he walked down his driveway, but aggressively shut off completely the second he went inside his house and closed the door. He was genuinely furious that a device explicitly named a motion sensor light decided to stop producing illumination when it stopped detecting literal motion. He wanted a smart light that could miraculously read his mind through the walls. 49. A totally baffled customer hauled a massive sheet of structural plywood back to the lumber desk, completely outraged by the terrible quality control. He complained that the wood was cheap and defective because he spent 3 hours aggressively peeling apart the thin wooden layers with a flathead screwdriver, and now it was ruined. The lumber associate had to take a very deep breath before explaining that plywood is literally manufactured by gluing extremely thin sheets of wood veneer together under massive pressure. The guy stubbornly demanded solid oak for the exact same price. 50. The repair shop mechanic almost lost his mind when a totally furious lumberjack wannabe brought in a premium gas chainsaw, claiming it could not even cut through warm butter. The mechanic took one quick glance at the massive metal bar and realized the customer had completely uninstalled the sharp cutting chain and put it back on totally backwards. When informed that the sharp cutting teeth need to actually face forward to bite into the tree bark, the guy aggressively argued that the machine should be smart enough to spin the other way to compensate. 51. A wildly angry customer stormed into the store, gripping a heavy-duty metal caulking gun, furious that it was completely broken right off the shelf. He aggressively squeezed the trigger over and over, demanding to know why the white waterproof sealant was not miraculously shooting out of the totally empty metal frame. The associate slowly had to explain that he actually needed to purchase a separate cylindrical tube of chemical caulk to load into the tool. The guy genuinely thought the metal skeleton magically synthesized silicone out of thin air. 52. One extremely frustrated weekend painter threw a metal paint roller frame onto the returns counter, absolutely covered in wet beige latex paint. He was practically screaming that the tool was useless because it refused to absorb any liquid and just aggressively scraped loud metal tracks across his living room drywall. The paint mixer stared at the bare metal cage in total disbelief and politely asked where the fluffy microfiber roller cover was. The customer had totally thrown the soft, fuzzy sleeve directly into the trash, thinking it was just protective shipping material. 53. A frantic woman brought a brand new digital smoke detector back to the store in a sealed plastic container, complaining that it was constantly screaming at her. She was absolutely terrified that the shrill beeping meant her house was currently engulfed in invisible flames. The electrical associate opened the battery compartment and realized she had completely left the clear plastic shipping tab tightly wrapped around the 9-volt battery. She was genuinely furious that safety devices required manual human intervention to activate the electrical current. 54. You really have to admire the absolute confidence of a guy who brought back a solid brass plumb bob, claiming it was a defective piece of garbage. He aggressively dangled the heavy pointed metal weight by its nylon string, complaining that it lacked any digital readouts or laser beams. He legitimately thought the ancient gravity-powered tool was supposed to automatically project a glowing red line onto his wall. The manager had to give a quick physics lesson on how gravity pulls heavy objects straight down to the floor. 55. The customer service desk was left completely speechless by a highly emotional man who demanded a massive refund on a box of premium rodent poison. His complaint was not that the chemical pellets failed to work, but rather that his garage now smelled absolutely terrible. He honestly believed the high-tech toxic bait was formulated to silently disintegrate the mice into a fine, odorless powder. He aggressively threatened to call the health department because the hardware store did not warn him that dead animals eventually start to naturally decay. 56. An incredibly angry father dragged a heavy-duty electric space heater into the store during a massive January blizzard, claiming it was incredibly weak. He was totally outraged that the small ceramic coils failed to keep his entire family warm while they were sitting outside on the completely open backyard patio. He legitimately thought a single plug-in bedroom heater possessed the thermal output of a raging backyard bonfire. The clerk had to explain the basic thermodynamic concept of walls and roof. Insulation trapping warm air indoors. 57. A deeply disturbed homeowner demanded a full refund for a heavy-duty plastic fly swatter, complaining that it was a highly destructive and messy weapon. She successfully used the flexible grid to smack a large housefly against her pristine white kitchen wall and was absolutely horrified by the tiny organic mess it left behind. She yelled at the cashier, claiming the tool should possess a microscopic vacuum feature to instantly suck up the bug exactly at the moment of impact. She completely refused to buy a sponge to wipe the wall clean. 58. One furious guy brought a massive industrial wet-dry vacuum back to the tool rental desk, screaming that it aggressively blew dust over his entire garage. The mechanic popped the heavy plastic lid off and immediately realized the customer had plugged the flexible black hose into the exhaust port instead of the intake valve. When informed that he had essentially built a highly powered leaf blower inside his enclosed workshop, the man stubbornly argued that a premium machine should just automatically know which direction he wanted the air to flow. 59. A highly aggressive customer stomped up to the plumbing aisle holding a totally squished, incredibly sticky toilet wax ring in his bare hands. He loudly complained that the weird yellow donut was a terrible candle because it did not have a wick and smelled absolutely disgusting when he tried to melt it with a lighter. The poor plumbing associate had to gently explain that the thick beeswax compound is specifically designed to create a watertight seal underneath a porcelain toilet bowl, not to provide romantic mood lighting in the master bedroom. 60. You will absolutely love the woman who brought back 3 empty plastic liquid ant baits, furiously complaining that they were completely defective. She placed the sticky traps on her kitchen counter and was highly offended that they actively attracted a massive trail of marching ants straight into her house. She completely misunderstood the entire concept of pest control bait, genuinely believing the sweet liquid was supposed to act like a terrifying chemical force field that aggressively repelled insects back into the yard. 61. An aspiring demolition expert practically threw a 10-pound steel sledgehammer onto the counter, screaming that the heavy metal tool was completely unbalanced. He had spent an entire afternoon trying to aggressively swing the massive wooden handle with just one hand, exactly like a lightweight finishing hammer. He was furious that his wrist was totally sore and demanded the store sell him a 10-pound solid steel block that magically felt as light as a feather. The manager politely recommended he try using both of his arms at the exact same time. 62. A highly agitated homeowner returned a small plastic tub of pink drywall spackle, totally outraged by the terrible aesthetic results. He used a metal putty knife to fill a massive fist-sized hole in his living room wall, but was furious that the bright pink paste dried to a stark, chalky white color that completely clashed with his dark green wallpaper. He aggressively argued that premium patching compound should automatically change its chemical pigment to perfectly match whatever surface it touches, like a highly advanced architectural chameleon. 63. A deeply annoyed customer marched into the store clutching a high-voltage outdoor bug zapper, loudly complaining that it was way too noisy. He hung the glowing ultraviolet lantern directly above his patio dining table and was absolutely horrified every time a mosquito violently exploded with a loud electrical crack. He demanded a silent, peaceful electrocution device so he could eat his barbecue dinner without being startled. The clerk had to explain that vaporizing an insect with thousands of volts of raw electricity is rarely a quiet acoustic experience. 64. The garden center associates still laugh about the incredibly angry landscaper who returned a heavy-duty steel wheelbarrow because the front rubber tire was totally flat. He had accidentally rolled the heavy cart directly over a giant rusty nail, completely puncturing the inner tube. He was absolutely furious that the thick black rubber did not magically heal itself exactly like human skin. He legitimately believed industrial tires were filled with solid bouncy ball material and accused the manufacturer of aggressively stealing his compressed air. 65. One extremely frustrated construction worker brought back a pair of heavy-duty tinted safety glasses, screaming that they totally ruined his vision. He tried wearing the dark polycarbonate lenses while working in a completely unlit, windowless basement, and was outraged that everything looked incredibly dark and shadowy. The cashier pointed out the giant sticker on the lens that clearly said sunglasses for outdoor use. The man stubbornly argued that safety gear should automatically grant him highly advanced military night vision in absolute pitch darkness. 66. A highly emotional backyard farmer demanded a massive refund for 10 tiny paper packets of premium carrot seeds, claiming the genetics were totally corrupted. She meticulously planted every single tiny seed completely upside down in the dirt, and was absolutely devastated when the green leafy tops sprouted directly up toward the sun anyway. She was totally convinced she had discovered a terrifying botanical mutation and threatened to call the agricultural department. The garden clerk had a very hard time explaining that plants naturally grow upward toward the light. 67. A completely panicked homeowner ran into the store waving a battery-powered stud finder, aggressively claiming his kitchen was completely haunted. He was trying to hang a heavy wooden spice rack directly above his kitchen counter and accidentally ran the magnetic sensor directly over his massive steel microwave. He was absolutely terrified when the device started violently beeping and flashing red lights. He demanded a full refund, completely refusing to accept that a heavy-duty metal detector will naturally react to a giant box of solid metal appliances. 68. We cannot forget the highly confused guy who dragged a 6-foot aluminum stepladder against the returns counter, complaining that the manufacturer was blatantly lying to consumers. He aggressively pointed to the prominent warning sticker on the very top plastic cap that read, "This is not a step." He legitimately thought the safety warning meant the entire metallic structure was just a decorative prop and not actually a real, functional ladder. He demanded to know why the hardware store was selling fake theatrical equipment to hard-working DIY enthusiasts instead of real climbing tools. 69. Let us finish with the absolute genius who caused a massive scene over a premium heavy-duty splitting axe. She threw the incredibly dull, heavily chipped metal blade onto the counter and demanded a full refund for defective steel. When the manager asked what kind of wood she was chopping, she looked at him like he was completely insane. She proudly admitted she spent the entire weekend using the sharp edge to violently smash apart a solid concrete patio in her backyard, and was genuinely outraged that the wood-cutting tool did not stay razor-sharp against literal rocks. If you were forced by law to permanently ban just one of these 69 people from ever owning a tool again, which specific number are you choosing and exactly why? Let the absolute roasting begin in the comments right now. If surviving this level of human stupidity entertained you, leave a like and subscribe before these exact same customers figure out how the internet works.